Day before the murder?
Day before the murder.
Outgoing from Treon Ingram?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Incoming to Justin Johnson's phone?
Correct.
And you pull it in Celebrate River program you're looking at, this is what it sort of comes up as, is that correct?
Correct. It looks like it would your regular phone, but on the side, as you can see below it, that will have just the information associated with that text message.
And here's the blown up photo, is that correct?
Correct.
And that is at 6:10 p.m. day before the murder.
Day before the murder.
All right, next.
This will be November 17th, 2021, the day of the murder at 2:58 a.m. And it's a outgoing text message to Treon Ingram. And it's going to be a location drop. And then the location that was dropped is going to be 1168 Bradley Street, Memphis, Tennessee, 38114.
From Justin Johnson's phone to Treon Ingram, 2:58 a.m. the morning of the murder.
Correct.
Do you know this address, 1168 Bradley Street?
Yes, it's to the left of 1174 Bradley. So if you're, I think it's if you're facing it. Yeah. So I think it's like that. It would be if you're facing 1174, it's going to be right there to the left.
And what's the significance of Bradley Street and or those addresses?
So 1174 is at the actual driveway, but where the white Mercedes-Benz was found. But I think it's kind of that driveway sits in between both houses.
Understood. And you say drop the location. That is Johnson sending a location to Treon Ingram at 2:58, and it's at Bradley location.
Yes, so the location drop, it's actually, when you look at it from the map, it's kind of, it looks like he just dropped his location.
Okay, like this is where I am. or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Okay,
Correct.
next slide. Now this is not pulled from the phone, is that correct?
That's correct.
Just to put the slide we just saw in context.
Correct.
3:16 a.m. For the record, this is a video that has already been played at trial as part of Exhibit 5. Where is this at?
This is going to be the Valero gas station at 853 South Highland.
And what is the significance of the two cars highlighted?
There's going to be the white Mercedes-Benz and the Q40, or I think it was an Infiniti. And essentially, I was using it to match up for the location drop. So we're trying to figure out what call detail, with this, I think the call logs you were able to track to see where they went after that.
Bradley location drop, and
Correct.
some 18-20 minutes later, we have the white Mercedes and the Infiniti at the Valero gas station.
That's correct.
And the individual who enters the store here, who is that?
That's Treon Ingram.
We can proceed to the next slide.
And then this is going to be a zoomed in still shot of the surveillance video. We were just trying to see if we could get a better view of where we were told they were met, where they met, just near some air pumps or something on the back end, and that was at 3:22:19 a.m. And that was about as good as we could get it as far as zooming into the photo.
And is this the individual that gets in the Mercedes and drives away?
That's correct. They kind of do like a switch, like one gets out, the other gets in. It was just very hard to tell distinctively who that individual was.
Absolutely. Would you agree with me it's impossible to tell from even the zoom in who that individual is just from the picture?
No, maybe that they have gray pants on, that's about it.
Next slide. 10:51 a.m. Tell me what we're looking at.
That's correct. 10:51 to 10:55. And this is going to be on November 17th at 10:51 a.m. And this is a photo, a still shot photo of Justin Johnson wearing a blue hoodie, gray sweatpants, and black shoes with white stripes, and the Bass Pro Shop hat. And it looks like it's going to be his daughter just standing, you can barely see her to the left. And then
Were you aware through the investigation that he was living there across town?
Correct, yes. And then the second photo, of course, is the white Mercedes-Benz.
And that is leaving the garage at 10:55, so about, well, pretty much 10:56, 56 seconds, so 10:56 a.m., is that correct?
Correct.
$10:54 a.m., so this will actually be in that time period that we just saw, is that correct?
Correct. So in between that time. Justin Johnson, we found he places an outgoing call to Cornelius Smith with a 0 duration. So essentially, it was a missed call. So he tried to contact him, but there was no communication, no voicemail picked up.
Okay, next slide.
At 11:56:57 a.m., we have an outgoing call to Treon Ingram from Justin Johnson, and that call was about 4 minutes, a little bit over 4 minutes long. And then we have on November 17th at 12:04:32 p.m., we have an outgoing call from Justin Johnson to Cornelius Smith, and that duration is about 17 seconds.
And we are within 20 minutes, 21 minutes of the homicide, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that call you said has duration?
Yeah, 17 seconds. And
12:23, is that correct?
Correct. So on November 17, 2021 at 12:23:06 p.m., Justin Johnson receives an incoming call from his mother, and that duration is 0, and that time frame was significant for me and the investigators because that was at the same time frame that the homicide was being committed.
And no duration, so I think I just said before, nobody picks up, no voicemail, just no connection.
And they actually had an abnormal completion code, which indicates, like, if you look at the service codes, that it had some kind of network interruption. That could mean nothing significant, but essentially he never picked up, or the call might have not gone through.
12:25 p.m., directly murder time frame or after, is that correct?
Correct. 12:25:40, Justin Johnson places an outgoing call to Anthony Mims, and it's got a 2-second duration, which appears probably to go unanswered.
This is right after the homicide.
Correct.
Who's Anthony Mims?
It's Big Jook, one of the, he's like the number 2 on CMG record label.
And how's Big Jook identified in Justin Johnson's phone?
Under Jook.
As Jook.
Yes. Okay, so here is 12:26:50 p.m. on November 17, 2021, and it's a FaceTime audio, so this is an actual identity lookup service. So what this was, essentially this was pulled from the file system, and so this isn't the actual FaceTime communication, and this, because those were deleted, and so they were missing from the call logs. You can see though in the file system, the actual phone will access certain things, and so the only thing that was remaining, because you can delete and move things, like you can operate and manipulate your physical phone, but you can't get rid of anything on the file system. It determines when it's appropriate to get rid of it. And so the only thing we found was that there was some type of application with the FaceTime audio that was accessed by FaceTime, and then it identified telephone number 901-692-2767, which we were able to identify to be Anthony Mims' telephone number.
So this is about a minute after the call that we just saw.
That's correct.
FaceTime, audio, or FaceTime rather. FaceTime, Justin Johnson to Big Joe.
Correct. Well, an interaction, we're not necessarily sure which
Okay.
direction, just that the interaction occurred. Right?
FaceTime interaction between Justin Johnson's phone
Correct.
and Big Joe's phone.
Correct.
Okay,
It occurred. There's something that the phone accessed.
very good.
And then right here is November 17th, 2021. You have at 12:39. So at 12:39:07, Justin Johnson places an outgoing call to Kiana Hooper. And then at 12:39:56, Justin Johnson receives an incoming text from Kiana Hooper. And then at 12:53 p.m., Justin Johnson places an outgoing call to Kiana Hooper. And the first call, which was at 12:39:07, lasted about 15 seconds. And then the last call, which was at 12:53 p.m., the duration was about 28 seconds.
And do you know who Kiana Hooper is?
His cousin, and that's the apartment they went to after the homicide.
Next slide.
The next slide is the actual, so the text message, that was just the record showing the text message. This is the actual text message that Justin Johnson received, which is 12:39:57 p.m. And it's her address, which is 4752 Haven Court.
Is that the Gospel Garden Apartments?
That's correct.
Used to be called the Two Lanes.
That's correct.
Next slide.
And after that, you have at 12:47:22 p.m., Justin Johnson sends that address, 4752, to Jermaine Sears.
And how did you establish that number was Jermaine Sears?
We use law enforcement databases. There was also some information within the text message that helped to identify him just by his real name and things of that nature. And then also we ended up contacting him to try to talk to him
On that number?
on that number. And we were referred to his attorney. And he's actually it appeared to be living out of town, so we kind of let it be.
Next slide.
The next slide is going to be at 12:40:30, so this text is essentially immediately after. He says, "Now, bro, I need you now." And that's an outgoing text from Justin Johnson to Jermaine Sears.
Next slide.
And then at 12:47:51, you have Jermaine Sears sending an incoming text to Justin Johnson saying that he's on his way, I'm on my way.
Next slide.
And then this is an outgoing call at 12:58:59, and this is going to be from Justin Johnson to Kiana Hooper. It lasts it's a duration of about 12 seconds.
What's this here?
So this is Jermaine Sears. This was unique as this was inside. It was a photo that Justin Johnson had from a text between Jermaine Sears, and that vehicle was important to us because that's the vehicle that shows up at Haven Court on surveillance video.
A nice Dodge Charger with that light black stripe and
That's correct. All right. So still November 17th, 2021. You have at 1:26:29, you have Cornelius Smith places an outgoing call to his girlfriend Angela Arnold.
let me back you up there. Whose phone was Cornelius using?
So he is utilizing Justin Johnson's phone.
So would it be more understand that you're privy to information, obviously, that came in the investigation?
Correct.
But would it be more accurate to say Justin Johnson's phone contacted Angela Arnold's phone at 1:26, 1:28, 1:28 that afternoon?
Yes, it would. With
And-
one text message, so 2 outgoing calls and 1 outgoing text message.
And who is Angela Arnold?
This is going to be Cornelius Smith School.
Okay.
And then we have that outgoing text, which is, this came from Angela Arnold's actual physical phone. So at 12850, that text, it's the Haven Court address.
Is this again, to be hyper-technical and accurate here, Justin Johnson's phone text Angela Arnold 4752 Haven Court?
That's correct. So it's an incoming text message from 901-236-1625.
Next slide.
Next slide is just, it shows the call log. So you have a outgoing call from the 901-236-1625, so Justin Johnson's cellular phone number, to Angela Arnold's cellular telephone number.
Okay.
And then you have, I've got on here as well, because we had her call detail record, just showing that incoming call coming from Justin Johnson's cellular device. And then at 2:07:15 p.m., you have, so this is going to be Angela Arnold's cellular device is now sending an outgoing text to Justin Johnson's cellular device. And it's going to be, "This is C, bruh, send me, bruh, numbers so I can get my phone."
And who is C?
C is going to be Cornelius Smith. They call him Little C.
And this was, I don't even know that we need to review these last two slides, but you also printed out the cellular device information for Treon Ingram's phone and for Angela Arnold's phone. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, on those reports.
Now, you mentioned something about Justin Johnson's messages, call logs. Did you say they've been deleted?
That's correct. They were not there. You can't delete those. And so we were able to see that he was utilizing his phone. He was communicating with people. I think as you saw, his mother calling and things like that. And those communications were not in the actual phone, the physical phone.
These are just sort of a mix of questions here that need your answer to. I think I've moved on from the phones. With regard to Mr. Johnson, a couple questions. Did you know he was a rapper?
Yes.
Did you review rap videos that he made?
I did.
Did you find some of those videos on his phone?
I did.
Did you observe in those rap videos that he has tattoos on his hands?
I did.
Have you yourself observed that he has tattoos on his hands?
Yeah.
Did you observe in those rap videos that he's left-handed or right-handed?
He's writing.
Did you I'll strike that. Did there come a point in this investigation while you're the case officer on it in which law enforcement wanted to find Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Did they go to Mr. Johnson's house?
Yes.
Did they go to other locations in Memphis looking for Mr. Johnson?
They did.
Was he found in Memphis?
He was not.
Was information received that he was outside of Memphis?
There was, yes.
Was information received that he had traveled back and forth sometimes from outside of Memphis to Memphis?
That's correct. He did.
Would you describe the attempts to find Mr. Johnson as a manhunt?
Yes, you could say that.
Multiple agencies,
Multiple agencies,
including the U.S. Marshals?
including the U.S. Marshals.
As part of looking for Mr. Johnson, was his social media monitored by law enforcement in those days that y'all are looking for him?
Yeah.
Is he ultimately taken into custody?
He is.
And do you remember what state he was taken into
I
custody?
think it was Indianapolis.
Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Were the murder weapons in this case ever recovered?
They were not.
You're familiar that the car on Bradley was recovered, is that correct?
That's correct. And
That's the address you mentioned before with the location drop from Mr. Johnson.
yeah, 1168 is next to 1174. It was kind of found in between there, back of 1174.
Earlier in this trial, there was a case officer on this case before you, is that correct?
That's correct.
Terrence Dabney, who retired.
Yes.
Earlier in this trial, Mr. Dabney was asked about testing that was done on the car on Bradley.
That's correct.
Was there information that the car had been cleaned and wiped down?
Yes.
Nevertheless, was crime scene performed on the car?
It was.
Would it be fair to say that there were fingerprints found in the car?
There were.
Cornelia Smith, Kirsten Gardner, Triana Ingram. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was there information or evidence that the perpetrators of the Dolph murder were wearing gloves?
Other than surveillance, but yes.
They all surveillance video, right?
Yeah,
You saw it.
Yeah. Thought you meant with DNA testing or something on the car.
Fingerprints found on the car, even though it had been cleaned.
Correct.
We know the people that got in the car at the time of the homicide are getting out of the car and in the car wearing gloves.
Correct.
Other testing that was done on the car, was there like chapstick found in the car?
Yes.
Testing on chapstick was performed, is that correct?
That's correct.
And some of these results, would they have come in after Mr. Dabney retired?
Yes, that's completely possible, yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Were you aware that on the chapstick that was found in the car, Triana Ingram's DNA is found on the chapstick?
Yes, it is.
Were you aware that during the investigation, they tried to search the Mercedes to find what may or may not be blood?
That's correct, yes.
Were you aware that they took samples of that stuff?
Yes.
Were you aware they also took what could be called touch DNA samples?
Yes.
And were you aware that that stuff was sent to TBI
Yes, it was.
with inconclusive results, either DNA obtained but not enough to make any sort of comparison,
That's correct.
or just simply inconclusive results?
Yeah, that's correct.
Do you know where Pressure World is?
Yes.
Where's that?
Right up there, up Lamar.
It's right by Lamar. In the Lamar Sims area?
Mhm.
Does that location bear any sort of significance in this case?
It does. That's where it was supposedly Cornelia Smith met with Hernandez Govan to get his actual phone that he left in the car after the homicide.
And that, as you said, that's in the area of Lamar and Sims. Is that correct?
Correct.
You aware that Mr. Govan's charged in this case?
I am.
Mr. Smith's charged in this case?
He is.
And Mr. Johnson's charged in this case?
That's correct.
Can you tell us why Big Jook is not charged in this case?
He is deceased.
questions, Judge.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So, Detective Browning, my name's Luke Evans. I think we've spoken before.
We have.
All right, so I've got a few more questions for you today. Just to follow up on some of the things you've testified to. So, if I understand it, you took over for Sergeant Dabney as the lead case agent or lead detective on this case.
I wouldn't say lead, it was more like we're a support team at
Okay.
MGU, but I was one of several lead, investigators on that team. Dabney and others still had control of that until it turned into more of a conspiracy thing, and then as a unit, we kind of pushed it forward.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure they appreciate you not trying to take all the credit.
It's a lot of work for one man, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, couple of things. Were you working the case at all November 17th when the homicide first occurred?
No, I was not.
Okay. How far down the road is it when you get involved?
Sometime around in the beginning of December, somewhere in mid-December.
Of 21?
Yeah.
Okay, so early on.
Oh yeah, early on, it was just, wasn't in November, I think it was in training when it happened, and then when we came back, some of my team was already, they were on the scene and were assisting as it started to grow. You need assets and manpower and things of that nature. That's when we started getting more involved.
Okay. So, couple of things about the phone and the exhibit that was put in, where you did a PowerPoint essentially, going through some of those phone records. And you talked about this some with Mr. Hagerman when there was calls that said Cornelia Smith calls Angela Arnold, and it was from Mr. Johnson's phone, right?
Correct.
So, and he made a point to say, like, look, just to be very accurate,
Right.
all you can really say is Justin Johnson's phone contacted that person.
Correct.
There's several other places in your report where you reference that Justin Johnson called individuals, right? But you can't say that Mr. Johnson necessarily placed those calls, correct?
No, just that his cellular device placed those calls, unless you take maybe the one on the elevator, clearly he was on the phone.
That one. For instance, you made a reference to a call to Big Joke or Anthony Mims in a FaceTime attempt. That you interaction, I think is what you
Correct.
called it.
Correct.
You can't say who initiated that call or that FaceTime interaction, correct? Only that it was something that occurred on that phone.
Yeah, I was basing it off testimony that was given to me by other, cooperating defendants and witnesses and things of that nature.
Okay. But based on the phone records, not getting into what other
Yeah,
people
the
with on
record
this point.
itself, just an interaction between his device and Anthony Mims'
Because
device.
you would agree with me, when you start relying on other cooperating defendants, you're relying on them to be truthful, right? About their interactions,
Always.
right? And they're not always truthful about their interactions, okay?
That's correct. That's why we like the phone.
Right? And so and in this case, there's multiple instances where somebody's claiming to be using someone else's phone, right? Like,
Oh, okay, yeah.
yeah, like the reason you say Cornelia Smith called Angela Arnold, right?
Correct, yeah.
Right.
He didn't have his phone.
Mr. Jamarcus Johnson having Mr. Johnson's phone for a period of time, according to his testimony, and utilizing that phone, right? And Mr. Johnson wasn't the one, according to Mr. Jamarcus.
I think he stated more when we interviewed him that he was utilizing it on the behalf of for Justin,
Sure.
doing three-way calls. So I
Sure,
don't know if
but-
that counts.
But he's got the phone, right? Not Mr. Johnson. At that point,
Jamarcus
he's
has
got
the
the phone, right? Not Mr. Johnson personally. So there's other people taking other people's phones for whatever reason, at least on one occasion, not even being in the same location as that person, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But when you're purely looking at call data, all you can say is this phone did this action,
Correct.
right?
This phone made that contact at this phone, yes.
And talking about, and I'm not asking you what someone said, but we talked about cooperating defendants in this case, one of which you met with was Hernandez Govan,
Correct.
on at least 2 occasions, correct?
Correct.
And he came in and gave you information about this case?
That's correct.
And he also did that, he had an attorney present, right?
Yes.
And he did that pursuant to an agreement, right, where he had protections, something called a proffer agreement, where he got to come in and say what he wanted to say without his words being used against him. Isn't that correct?
Correct. He had a problem.
Right? And you understand that to mean that some people call that kind of a queen for a day agreement. He's allowed to come in,
And tell the truth.
hopefully, right?
Well, that's on him, because then he loses the proper agreement.
Right. Right, and that's the risk, right? People come in and lie,
Well, that's his risk then.
right?
Right?
But the assumption is he tells the truth under a proffer agreement, and what he's telling law enforcement in that meeting, those words, they can't come in and use those words against him, right?
Correct. Yes.
It's a form of something called use immunity, right? But they can't use those words.
May they approach?
Now, kind of moving forward from some of the phone information, when you're looking at this case, obviously you're looking at the video, right? And it shows the video at Makita Cookie, right? And it shows a Bass Pro Shop, what looks like a Bass Pro Shop hat, right?
That's correct.
And you see a similar hat at Concourse, Crosstown video, correct?
Yeah, identical hat, I would
Right.
say.
Well, you say identical, but let me ask you, did you recover the hat?
No.
All right. Very popular hat.
Yes, it's distinct.
Distinctive, no doubt, right? I mean, it's Bass Pro Shop, but a very popular hat. I mean, you know, almost a stone's throw from here is one of the biggest Bass Pro Shop in the
I'd say
world.
It's a lot more popular now.
Well,
That was not a common thing at that time, I don't think, to see rappers wearing the Bass Pro Shop that I saw. And that's what I do. For a living, we deal with all types of situations where you're keeping up with the
I mean,
videos and what these guys are doing.
so you're aware that a rapper named Travis Scott has his own, like, signature Bass Pro Shop hat, right?
No, I did not.
Okay. So, and people like Gwen Stefani have gone on Instagram and posted themselves in a Bass Pro Shop hat,
No, I didn't know that.
right? And so, kind of a trend, a popular trend, right? Those people are posting it. I mean, Gwen Stefani doesn't live in Memphis that I know of.
Yeah, I mean, if you say it is,
Right.
I just have not seen it when it came. That just wasn't a common hat that I observed in our investigations and just things, and,
Right.
you know.
Well, and even,
Gwen Stefani,
sorry.
you know what I mean?
Well, you know, Some people like the voice these days, right?
I'm not hating on it.
And so, during your investigation, you interviewed at least one individual from the Lakita Cookie that identified a person and said he always wears a Bass Pro Shop hat.
I didn't interview. I don't know what interview you're talking about.
Well, do you remember? Would you have reviewed the other interviews in this case? Were you?
Yeah, there was a lot of interviews, but I don't remember somebody being identified. I could be wrong, but I just don't recall that ever happening.
So I'm going to ask you something to refresh your recollection.
Okay.
And okay. And there's a highlighted portion there in the middle. It looks like an interview that was done by Detective, I think, or then Sergeant Dabney. Do you see what I'm referring to?
Yeah.
Okay. So there was at least one person interviewed, and I'm not going to state this fellow's name because I don't know.
Burglarizing Walmarts with a Bass Pro hat?
Something, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, but there's a
I
guy out
didn't even see
there.
a reference to a murder or anything about that, but
Well, I mean, some guy running around in a Bass Pro Shop hat, right? So, popular hat,
according to
whether,
somebody.
say again?
According to somebody, I guess. I
Sure.
don't remember interviewing that person or even seeing that interview.
But, I mean, no doubt you looked at it. The interview happened. There's a report here of it from Detective Dabney, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, the white Mercedes, did it have any bullet holes in it?
I think it did in the rear. Pretty sure.
Okay. What about inside? Were there any indications of a bullet hole or?
There might have been, I can't recall. I think the window might have been busted out.
Okay.
It's been 3 or 4 years. I haven't reviewed everything.
Now, I'll ask you this question about cameras. You're aware that as soon as Bradley Street became a place of interest, where a car's found on Bradley, that detectives went out and canvassed that area to talk to neighbors and everyone else
Correct.
to see if they had any information.